kind of the other thing, and we don't need to spend as much time on this, but I did come across another thing I wanted us to at least touch on. Speaking of young Christian men, like Jay Beebs might count himself among this demographic. There's sort of been, if you followed, I don't know, I love data, I love stats, I love kind of seeing trends. I know you can get too caught up in that and like put too much stock in some of that, just sort of the numbers. And again, those are only top part of the story. There's always so much to that, but there has been like a pretty clear trend that's emerged in various ways and being validated of just like young men in particular being more and more drawn to like religion and faith, like that has been one of the fastest, I don't know, the biggest growing demographics as far as those, like the shifts of like religious in America, at least. And there was a new poll, Gallup poll that just came out, and we can link the whole thing in the show notes. But that kind of, I don't know, kind of validated this with like actual numbers, like, because we sort of, the eye test kind of shows us that young men are getting more involved. This kind of gave a bit of data, and I think, I don't know, there are a couple things I wanted to touch on with that. But maybe share, if you want, Naya, share some of said data.
If I want to.
Yeah, if you want to, or if I want you to. So maybe share some of the data, and then we can kind of dig into a little bit of what it might mean.
Yeah, it's actually, there's a really huge jump. So one note, it doesn't seem like these findings are necessarily about Christianity, but it's about religion in general, which I think as a whole, getting more involved in religion, there's more accountability, so it's probably a good thing in general, even if it's not Christianity. But anyways, so in 2022 to 2023, the men aged 18 to 29 said that religion is important to them was only 28%, and in 2024 to 2025 that had risen to 42%, which is a huge jump. Women aged the same have stayed around 30%, which is and women of all ages are at kind of historic lows. Men's monthly attendance to church or some sort of house of worship went from 33% to 40%, and while women's rates only increased 3 points from like 36 to 39%. And then an interesting fact is that mainly young Republican men increased from 51% to 58%. Young Republican women from 44% to 52%, but the young Republican women make up such a small portion of the population of women as a whole that it has little effect on the religiosity of young women as a whole. And then young Democratic men went from 22% to 26%. So all those numbers, what they mean is that a majority of the men that are going to church more and saying religion is more important to them are more conservatively leaning, which was interesting. But Americans as a whole are at the lowest levels in Gallup's trends, excluding young men. So that was a mouthful, but that's the summary.
Yeah, and I think like, the bottom line to that is just that men disproportionately compared to women, I mean young men compared to, I mean all women or young women, there does seem to be a draw. Again, why that is sort of the question. Like I think there's probably a dozen or more than a dozen reasons. Like, you know, don't want to overly simplify. That's the danger with sometimes with data. You know, to just be, oh, obviously, you know, we have a revival among young men. Well, there might be more. I don't know. There might be more to it than that, but it does seem to be like, because there's been a bunch of other data and stuff that affirms this, and I think even like you said, this is sort of focused on like religious affiliation activity, and I know even that is kind of interesting because I think because in some ways that's like the, you know, again that can have bad implications, but I think that's sort of like the deeper end of the pool as opposed to like spirituality, you know, like I think it's more likely for someone to be like, yeah, like I'm more spiritual these days, you know, this ambiguous sort of, you know, I don't go to church or read my Bible or pray or really do anything, but I just feel like there's got to be something out there. Like I don't know, that's going to capture a lot more people. And I think that's still, I don't know, to me, that's still exciting and people on the path towards finding Jesus. But like when you get to like religion, that's more like, okay, it's not just like, you know, I'm more open to spiritual things. It's like I'm actually drawn to like practice this, to commit to some like religion, like actually I don't know. To me, that's more not impressive is not the right word, but like more telling of just like
Mm-hmm.
this is a shift towards something that is like actively being played out. I'll kind of say two things. I think there's some cultural implications, like entertainment wise. Some of my two maybe caveats or why I'm somewhat a bit more cautious about some of this data than I know other people. Like I've seen a lot of people run with this kind of movement as like
Mm.
I don't know, this the same almost the same as like the Justin Bieber thing as far as like yeah, like, he's a Christian, we're on board, yeah, culture,
Mm-hmm.
he loves Jesus, and it's like yeah, like I'm excited. Like I think young men, I don't know, that I think that's a very key this sociologically like a
Yeah.
key demographic to reach. I think it's one that the church historically in the last while like had been losing and having the harder time to keep interested. And I think a lot of churches aimed more towards women and men felt out of place. And it was sort of church was more feminine. And I think reaching young men is exciting and like is a super, an awesome opportunity for the church. I am a little bit hesitant to like fully just jump head first into the pool and like start celebrating because sort of what you touched on. Like, I think the political factor is real. Like I think
Mm-hmm.
that melding of like kind of conservative politics and like Christianity. I think there's some good parts to that. I think there's some parts that are not good about that, and I think some of the things that sort of draw that appeal to men the way our culture is now is not healthy. Like it is sort of this, I don't know, macho alpha male
Mm-hmm.
push back against the culture and, embrace like I think there are a lot of like chauvinistic things and stuff going on, kind of countercultural movement that I think appeal you can understand why that would appeal to a young man to sort of embrace sort of that
Mm-hmm.
aspect of them. And I don't necessarily think that's always good. I think there's some bad stuff to that. So I don't know. I do think there's always more to the story than you know like why they're
Yeah.
being drawn and what they actually see as religion
Mm-hmm.
is obviously the key thing. Before I,
And
yeah,
it
you
feels like more like a trend. Like these numbers, they're really high and that's awesome, but they've changed since 2000. They've changed a lot. Like the young women's demographic, if I'm remembering correctly, I'll have to check. But I think they were at the highest in 2002, 2001. And so it's just gone down. And like these trends don't ever stay the same. Like not to say that God isn't working through this, but I don't think we should be too quick to like you said run with it and say, "Oh, there's a revival happening in America," and completely like not doing anything to try and foster that, just being like, "Yay, we did it," and I think that there's a danger in even more division like we're talking about among with all of the political affiliation. Like I think a lot of the macho mindset just leads to more of a split, and we need to not be doing that.
yeah, and I think I don't know. I think there's a couple things. I do think like I don't know. I think like, even all the greatest like revivals that we've had, like they're obviously not still going. Like I think it doesn't necessarily to me like discredit the value, just even if it is like
Mhm.
temporarily. Like I think God has throughout history kind of moved insurgent groups um and some of that impact is long lasting, even if maybe the trends eventually some of that dies away and like the fire doesn't burn um quite as hot. So I do think there is sort of I don't know. I think there's something to that. But the other part is like I think part of why that happens too is because like you said, like there is sort of these cultural or the context of it. And I think of even just like why like I feel like the gospel and like Christianity has always really like I don't know caught root in the groups that feel like I don't know, the most vulnerable, or like the most outcasted, or like
Mhm.
the most like persecuted, if you want to use the stronger language, or at least throughout history. Like I think like the early church very much was like it didn't happen with like the rich and famous, and I mean eventually it did, but like in Jerusalem or in Rome, I mean, it was this like fishers, and it was a lot of women who had no place in society. It was slaves. Like it very much spoke to the hearts of people that were desperate and felt like they society, the people that were very established and had all the power weren't necessarily the ones that Jesus was, or like the early church was. There were a few of those that did come, and the gospel ultimately did spread. So like I think you sort of see that, and like I think which in some ways makes sense why women have for a long time historically been most drawn to church. Like I think they um
Mhm.
have been the demographic that's felt like they maybe haven't always had a place, or they haven't had the power, or they felt persecuted or put down by society. And like I think church sort of offered them not an escape in a bad way, but like a like a an actual outlets to find purpose and to find meaning, and like
Mhm.
to be able to have an influence and to have a place. And like I think if you sort of follow, this is where it kind of comes in culturally. I think a lot of the movement of young men towards faith can be traced to just some of the like hostility, or like the in a trite way, the negative PR that men have had in I don't know, the last 10 years. Like I know a lot of the, not that it's like, again, I'm not implying necessarily that like, you know, men aren't still in prominent places, and that, that there's been a total
Mhm.
paradigm shift, but just like so much focus on things like toxic masculinity. Um, not just that, like, not just calling out like that masculinity is toxic there and that's bad, but like the conversation very quickly became like masculinity is toxic. Like any maleness itself is like inherently bad, and we
Mm.
need to kind of push back
Mhm.
against, like I think of, like someone like Harry Styles, like to me is like, again, I don't know the
Mhm.
guy. I don't want to throw too much egg at him, but like just sort of the image of like the perfect, the ideal male very quickly became like a feminine male. Like it was very much the one that was wearing the
And you
pink
can
fluffy, the woman outfit, and like,
Yeah, and you can
yeah.
see that in the development of Timothy Chalamet as well, because he started with Call Me by Your Name, and he started with roles where he was a little more effeminate, and now he's like he's Marty Supreme. He's dating, oh, who is he dating? He's dating some, either, oh my
Oh,
gosh, who's,
Jenner,
is it
is
Kendall?
it Kylie Jenner
I th-
or Kendall
uh,
Jenner? Yeah.
I
So
don't
I don't
know.
keep see I don't keep up with the
But he's
Kardashian slash Jenners.
yeah, I don't either, but he's completely changed his brand. And I think that that is because of the trends and how our society is viewing men and how they need to act. And it's just, it feels like it's going up and down or back and forth, however you want to say it. It's like we overcorrected from toxic masculinity, like you were saying, and now we're kind of
Yeah,
finally
that's sort
coming
of, that was sort of my
back
point.
a
Like I
little
think you
bit.
see, I think, yeah, like I think, because even like Sabrina Carpenter, to bring her back like, at Coachella, like she did her song "Man Child" and like had like literal
That's
men as
so
dressed up as
fun.
as dogs like on
I've
stage, like
Oh yeah.
um but very much like I don't know, capturing like men are dogs and toxic,
Mhm.
and or like I even the like when Star Wars kind of rebranded, came back out, like the whole, I know, got a bunch of pushback. The Force is female, like is everything kind of
Oh,
shifted,
I
like
don't even remember that.
and like again, like I think changes needed to happen. It's like I'm not implying
Yeah.
that like, but it was very much like a, okay, women have had it hard, men have maybe not, like, so men are bad now, and we just need women, and to be male is to be bad. Like the only good male is one that is very female, like very feminine, and I think in some ways what I see now is like the
It's
for good and bad is like the same. Like the pendulum is like, okay, male was all bad, and well, that's actually not good either to have this sort of, and that's, men feel like they're under attack, or they need purpose, or like, okay, am I bad because I'm a guy? Like, am I
Mhm.
toxic just because I'm not a female?
It's
Like, do I need to
the
act?
Yeah, it's the performative male phenomenon. I don't know if you've heard, have you heard of that?
No.
It's pretty funny. It's like they read feminist literature, they drink matcha,
Oh
and
yeah,
wear
it's like the,
these.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's like the whole
they're
what's
and
the
there's
what's your name?
an
The Blake
ally to
Lively, that
women.
whole the guy that's in all the hot
Uh,
water for that. Like that sort of was his thing, as he's very much the, which is what made that. But I, and I think now you've seen the pendulum shift, and I think you've seen it shift for bad. Of like, okay, to counteract that, like we're gonna be the biggest alpha male, chauvinistic, like male power. Like, and
hmm
you see a lot of that of like just embracing sort of the toxic, the things you call toxic. We're gonna show it to be good, but I think you also see the good side of that is, I think you, I think some of that cultural shift and how much is aimed at like female or like deconstructing masculinity, I think it did leave a lot of men like just looking for purpose now, like looking for validation, looking
hmm
for something to, like, am I bad, what does this mean to me? And I think the same way, I think it drove a lot of female, like women, to church and to faith. I think we've seen it drive men to church. Like it's like they've found sort of a place there
hmm
that affirms that part of them, and where they can kind of have that purpose. And I don't know. I think that is good. Like I think I don't. Maybe it's not good. What sort of unshook them? And I think some of that went way, way, way too far. Um, but like the end result is you sort of see this massive shift, and I think you even see it like I've noticed even the stuff that we've done here at the Collision, or the things that are coming up, like so much of the target audience for like faith-based content for like decades was like the middle-aged church lady, like the very conservative church
hmm
lady. She wanted uplifting, she wanted romance, wanted very sanitized. It was all romantic comedies, or love, or sort of dramas. Um and now like so much of the hits, like the big emphasis is on things that are, I don't know, like the Pendragon thing from Daily Wire, or like the House of David, or Young Washington, or just things that are. There was another one that I just saw based on like another Angel Studios movie. It was just announced, kind of based on like war, and very much more aimed at like the target audience now seems to be like men, like we, or even like that Homeland Angel Studio show was very much leaning into sort of that like big guys with big guns. And I don't know. I think you sort of see the cultural that sort of reflecting the, like, no, like the people that are the most open to it, the people that get right now are young men, because they sort of
hmm
need, I don't know, there's a draw to sort of that biblical uh masculinity, I guess, like, and you sort of see the culture trying to latch onto that. So I don't know if you have any other final thoughts for that, but I think it's an interesting shift. I think it's always hard, like in the middle of these things, to draw any kind of conclusion, because they're still happening. Like I think it's easier to kind of look
hmm
back and see how culture shifted. I think a lot of times when we do that in the middle of like a movement, you're, I don't know, you're sort of guessing, you're sort of riding the wave, and you don't always have a full perspective on it.
hmm
But I do think it does show just the, I don't know, to me that shows the influence of culture. Of, I think a lot of this shift happened, um, like a lot of the stuff that the reaction is coming to was stuff that was pushed through movies and media and celebrity culture, sort of like the toxic masculinity, all that kind of stuff. Like I think that's where it was the most prominent, in the types of movies and the types of images that we saw. Um, and now you sort of see the reaction to that. So I don't know. I think it's interesting. Oh,
hmm
Koji, if you haven't looked into some of the phenomenon, we'll drop some of the links in there. So I do think, like, personally, I think I do try to be a little bit more hesitant to like just, before I just jump in and just start embracing everything. I think there's always more to it, but I do think it is a very exciting opportunity for the church, and I do hope that
hmm
whether the answer is just making more male centric faith based media, or it's something beyond that, I do hope we do kind of rise to the occasion.